Let's continue our journey of looking at the God who is revealing himself to us and showing us his identity. In Genesis chapter 15, we read the encounter where God begins to reveal himself to Abraham, or Abram as he was. And we see God revealing himself in a vision to Abraham, where he begins to reveal some of his heart and his purposes and his plans for him. And in so doing, we see Abraham respond by saying, "Sovereign Lord." That's how it's translated in my Bible. But in the original language, what we see God's name again being sort of a double-barreled name, but this time it's Adonai Yahweh, or Adonai Jehovah. This begins to introduce us to the third most common name that God is referred to through the Bible, of Adonai. And Adonai, as it's often spelt, again is a plural in the tense, pointing again towards the existence, for me anyway, it points towards the existence of God as the Trinity. But it's worth noting that for many or most Jews, Yahweh was considered such a holy name that people didn't want to take God's name in vain. And so the name Adonai was often substituted for the name Yahweh because people were afraid to sin against God. Often in our culture, we work as Christians to get close to God, and often we think of God as our friend, getting close to him, that idea of sort of intimacy with God. Sometimes we miss, though, the sense of the holiness of God. I've often looked at holiness as having a silent W, as wholeness. The God who created all things, made everything perfect, and desires us to be whole. And that's where holiness comes in, that God actually wants the best for us. And Adonai speaks of a desire to know God and to respect God. But what does Adonai mean? What's the difference between Adonai and Elohim and Yahweh or Jehovah? Adonai is a term that's used of a sovereign. It's used of someone who is in authority. It's used like we might use the name Lord, thinking of a lord in the House of Lords, somebody who is owed respect. But also, it's somebody who we might view as having sovereignty over us, somebody who rules over us. And as such, begins to introduce the idea that God is our king, he's our ruler. And as our sovereign, as we give our life to him, he has a plan for us, he has a purpose for us. And we often talk about the sovereign will of God. God actually wants a relationship with us and wants to give us a purpose and a plan. And as a sovereign, he has the right to do that. He has the right to give us direction and guidance. I guess the challenge for many of us, though, is that we don't actually like the idea of someone being lord over us. We talk in negative terms about someone lording things over us. And so the idea of submitting to somebody as a sovereign, as a lord, is not something that we're always comfortable with. But in the Bible, where we read Lord written in lowercase letters, it distinguishes it from Yahweh, which was written in uppercase letters. And it points us towards the sense of submission to the God who loves us, cares about us, has a plan and a purpose for us. And I wonder today, do you wrestle with the idea of submitting to God? Do you wrestle with the idea of letting him actually be Lord and directing what we want to do, directing the choices that we make? If we're going to be disciples who follow God, there is a place for submitting to God as our Lord. And I wonder, do you wrestle with that? Do you fight against that? Or are you happy to let God be your Lord?